The room erupted in laughter when my younger sister raised her glass and said, "Here's to Maya, 35 and still single. At least someone has to keep mom company." My mother didn't just laugh. She wiped a tear from her eye and muttered, "Well, someone has to be the family sacrifice." For 8 years, my family treated me like their ultimate backup plan and quiet background extra. They pitied me. They mocked me. But what they didn't know was that while they were busy laughing, I was keeping a secret that was about to turn their entire world upside down. I looked my sister dead in the eye, took a slow sip of my wine, and said, "Actually, I've been happily married for 3 years, and we just bought your house." Before I tell you how their arrogant smiles completely shattered, drop a comment with the city or country you're watching from today. Now, let me tell you how it all started. My name is Clara. I'm 27 years old, a senior corporate auditor, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the invisible thread holding my family together. My younger sister, Vanessa, is 24 and has always been my mother Evelyn's golden child. Whatever Vanessa wanted, Vanessa got: endless shopping sprees, paid tuition, and unconditional praise. Meanwhile, I was treated like a glorified servant and an endless piggy bank, expected to quietly foot the bills while staying completely out of the spotlight. That dynamic reached its peak on a cool Thursday evening at an absurdly expensive steakhouse in downtown Chicago. We were gathered to celebrate Vanessa's grand engagement to Julian, a wealthy heir from a prominent local business family. What my mother and sister conveniently forgot to mention to the waiters, and to Julian's parents, sitting across the white tablecloth, was that I had secretly paid the $3,000 deposit for the private room. My mother had cornered me 2 weeks prior, weeping about family pride and promising to pay me back, though we both knew that was a lie. I sat near the end of the table in a modest navy dress, quietly sipping my water, while Vanessa flashed her massive diamond ring at everyone who walked past. I was content to stay quiet, get through the dinner, and go home. But as the wine flowed, I could see the familiar, wicked glint entering my mother's eyes. They didn't just want my money that night, they wanted a show. Julian's father, a stern man with silver hair, set his glass down and glanced kindly toward my end of the table. "So, Clara," he said, breaking the ambient noise of the restaurant, "Vanessa tells us you work in finance. Do you have anyone special in your life right now? A partner joining us tonight?" Before I could even open my mouth, Vanessa let out a shrill, theatrical laugh that drew the attention of nearby waiters. She leaned across the table, tapping her manicured nails against her wine stem. "Oh, Mr. Sterling, please. Clara? A partner?" She shook her head, covering her mouth as if trying to hide a laugh. "Clara's 35 and still single. Honestly, we've stopped asking. At her age, the dating pool is more like a puddle." My jaw tightened, but I kept my posture straight. I was 27, not 35. She had added nearly a decade to my age just to make me sound washed up in front of her new in-laws. Instead of correcting her, my mother chimed in, tossing her head back in cruel delight. "It's true," Evelyn added, patting Julian's mother on the arm with synthetic pity. "Clara's always been focused on her paperwork. We've accepted that she's going to live in my basement forever, taking care of me in my old age. Every family needs one quiet spin-off, right?" Julian's parents exchanged an uncomfortable glance, clearly taken aback by the sudden, unprovoked humiliation. Julian shifted in his seat, clearing his throat awkwardly. But Vanessa and my mother weren't finished. They exchanged that familiar, satisfied smirk, the look of two women who loved putting me in my place to make Vanessa look like the ultimate prize. They thought I would just lower my head, blush, and swallow the insult like I always did. The air at the table grew heavy, with expectant silence. Vanessa took a slow, triumphant sip of her cocktail, while my mother picked at her napkin, waiting for my cheeks to burn red. They expected tears. They expected me to mumble an apology, excuse myself to the restroom, and hide. Instead, I slowly set my water glass down on the white linen tablecloth. The soft clink echoed in the tense quiet. I looked my sister dead in the eyes, letting a calm, razor-thin smile touch my lips. "Actually, Vanessa," I said, my voice smooth and carrying effortlessly across the table, I'm 27, and I've been happily married for 6 months. The smug expression on my mother's face instantly froze. Vanessa's fork stopped midair. Oh, please, Clara, Evelyn scoffed, though a nervous flicker crossed her eyes. Don't embarrass yourself by making up fairy tales just because your sister got engaged first. It's pathetic. A fairy tale? I asked softly. Without breaking eye contact, I reached beneath the collar of my navy dress and unclasped the delicate gold chain I always wore around my neck. Sliding off the band, I placed a platinum ring onto my left ring finger. The solitaire diamond caught the restaurant's warm lighting, blazing brightly. Before either of them could utter another word, I pulled up my phone, unlocked the screen, and slid it across the table toward Julian's parents. Displayed clearly on the high-resolution screen was our official legal marriage certificate. Julian's father pulled out his reading glasses and leaned over the illuminated screen. His eyes scanned the document, moving from the state seal at the top down to the official signatures. Beside him, Julian leaned in to take a look out of casual curiosity. But as his eyes landed on the groom's name, the color drained from Julian's face so fast he looked like he might pass out. Arthur Vance. Julian whispered, his voice cracking slightly. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with absolute disbelief. Your husband is Arthur Vance? The founder of Vance Capital? My mother scoffed, looking flustered. Julian, dear, don't fall for it. It's probably just some middle management guy with a common name. No, Mrs. Evelyn, Julian interrupted, his hands noticeably shaking as he pointed to the screen. That's the official signature of Vance Capital's CEO. My family's firm has been waiting 3 months for a single meeting with his team. We've been begging them to secure our $10 million funding expansion. Julian's father sat up straight, his entire demeanor toward me instantly shifting from polite pity to profound respect. You're married to Arthur Vance? He asked, his voice laced with awe. He's famously private about his personal life. We had no idea. I gave a polite nod. Arthur prefers to keep his personal life separate from the press. We had a small, private ceremony. I watched Vanessa's jaw drop. Her smug grin completely vanished, replaced by an expression of sheer panic as she looked from Julian to me. Julian turned to Vanessa, his eyes dark with sudden fury. He realized that the woman she had just spent the last 10 minutes belittling, mocking, and calling washed up was the sole key to saving his family's business empire. Julian's father quickly took the lead, leaning forward with an eager smile. Clara, Mrs. Vance, this is incredible. We've been trying to get our business proposal past Vance Capital's preliminary review for weeks. Perhaps you could mention our family's track record to Arthur? I took a slow sip of my water, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make everyone at the table sweat. Actually, Mr. Sterling, I said, keeping my tone perfectly professional, you don't need to ask Arthur. As senior corporate auditor, I personally review every major funding proposal that comes across his desk. Julian's eyes widened further. In fact, I continued, I spent yesterday afternoon reviewing the Sterling Group's filing. It was quite interesting, really. Your numbers were solid, but I noticed a sudden, massive $200,000 withdrawal listed under unallocated personal expense for next month. Julian froze. His father whirled around to look at him, his face darkening with suspicion. What $200,000, Julian? Julian swallowed hard, his eyes darting frantically to Vanessa, who was shrinking back into her leather chair. Well, I said, placing my hands neatly on the table. According to the notes attached to the draft, Julian promised Vanessa a $200,000 dowry payment to purchase a luxury condo in her name, funded directly from your company's expected investment capital. My mother and sister insisted it was a requirement for the marriage. Julian's father gasped, turning on his son in an instant. You are going to skim $200,000 off our expansion loan to buy her a condo before the ink was even dry on the contract. My mother opened her mouth to defend Vanessa, but Julian's father slammed his hand on the table. Silence, he snapped. You two didn't just insult our guest. You've been treating my son like an open checkbook. Julian's father stood up from the table, his face flushed with anger as he adjusted his suit jacket. We are done here, he said coldly, looking down at my sister. My family will not be associated with people who use deception to drain our resources and humiliate others for sport. Julian looked at Vanessa, the illusion completely shattered. I can't believe I almost fell for this, he muttered, pulling the engagement ring box from his pocket and throwing it onto the table. The engagement is off. Don't call me. As Julian and his parents walked out of the private room, the heavy oak doors clicked shut behind them. The room fell into a suffocating silence. Then my mother exploded. She slammed her hands onto the table, her eyes wide with rage. Are you happy now, Clara? She shrieked, her voice echoing off the walls. You just ruined your sister's entire life. You brought up those numbers on purpose just to embarrass us. Vanessa burst into hysterical tears, clutching her hands to her face. You jealous snake. You ruin everything. Call your husband right now and make him sign Julian's deal. You owe us. I slowly stood up, smoothing down my dress, feeling completely calm for the first time in my life. I don't owe you anything, I said quietly. For years, you treated me like a bank account and a maid, hiding me away while taking my hard-earned money. But tonight, your greed caught up with you. My mother stepped toward me, her voice shaking with venom. If you walk out that door, you are no longer part of this family. I looked at them both, two bitter women who had built their lives on appearances, and smiled. Good. 6 months have passed since that night at the steakhouse, and my life has never been more peaceful. Without my financial bailouts, my mother and Vanessa were forced to downsize drastically. Unable to pay for their lavish lifestyle, Vanessa had to take a retail job, while my mother had to sell her house to cover her mounting debts. As for the Sterling Group, Arthur's risk management team officially rejected their funding proposal after a formal audit confirmed their financial mismanagements. Meanwhile, Arthur and I celebrated our first formal wedding anniversary with a quiet getaway to Italy. Sitting on a terrace overlooking the Amalfi Coast, I watched the sunset with the man who respects me, supports me, and loves me for exactly who I am. I used to think that staying silent was the only way to keep peace in a toxic family. But standing up for myself that night taught me a valuable lesson. You don't owe loyalty to people who only value you when you're useful to them. Cutting off their toxicity wasn't revenge, it was self-respect. Now, as I look out over the ocean, I finally feel free. I found my voice, built a real home, and proved that being quiet never meant being weak. My past no longer defines my future, and for the first time in 27 years, I am truly happy. What would you have done if your family humiliated you like that? Would you have kept your secret, or would you have exposed the truth right there at the table? Comment your thoughts below. And if you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share it with a friend. Thank you so much for watching.